Hi everyone, Rose Wildsmith here, and welcome to my first ever artist's vlog. Had a bit of a painting frenzy this week. I realised that I'd become more and more inhibited and I'd stopped actually making art, and I couldn't really figure out why. So then I picked up this book, Art and Fear. I've had it for a while. I had read it before, and it's by David Bayliss and Ted Orland. If you haven't read it, I'd recommend giving it a go. This is a quote from the book. Talent is rarely distinguishable over the long run from perseverance and lots of hard work. And another quote, what separates artists from ex-artists is that those who challenge their fears continue, those who don't quit. There's a lot of encouragement in the book about not worrying whether your art is good and just getting on with the job of making as much art as you can, no matter what. So I had a realisation after I'd read this book that I am afraid of drawing. And I knew this in the past. I went to a life drawing class where the focus was very much on measuring and getting all the proportions right. And at that time, I was just getting back into drawing and I found it very stifling, and it kind of made me feel really inhibited, like I couldn't do it right. And I stopped drawing for, well, a long time. And then I started to get back into it and I started to do blind contour drawings. And then I think I sort of thought that I'd got over that fear and that was fine. But I realised that I still had this real fear of trying to draw things representationally, because I felt like I would be judged about whether or not it was good. So I was feeling buoyed on by the book, and I decided to take out my bird identification book that I've had on my shelf for a while now and just have a go at drawing some of the birds in this book. So this is the Collins Pocket Guide to Birds, and my friend who's an ornithologist says this is the most reliable bird identification book. So this was my very first attempt at painting a bird. I was so pleased with myself for getting over my fear. And then I did another one in here. And it's funny because it looks like he's pooping little blue dots, but that was just something that was already on the page. I much preferred this one actually. I think it was an improvement on the first one. And this was just a house sparrow. And then I went on and I did this long-eared owl. And I didn't do the background first, I did the owl, and then I came in later and did this background. And then I tried this rose finch. And again, I did the background afterwards. And this was really fun, trying to mix the right colours. And then this one I wasn't quite as keen on. Didn't realise how hard it would be to do a gull. They don't have as much colour variation on them, but you know, it was still fun. And I did the background first this time and then did this over the top. Oh, and then this one. And did this one in the junk journal. And then I took this to a sketchbook social that I had here in Amsterdam, and I did these drawings of birds while I was there, just in pencil because I didn't have my paints with me. I really like this little egret, like the shape of it. So it was such a good feeling to overcome something that I've been avoiding. And then I realised that I have been afraid of getting my paints out recently. What's all that about? It's only paint, what's so scary? So I got out my paints and I started to play and just enjoy the feeling of pushing paint around, and I realised how much I missed it. I love painting. I wanted to work loose, so I started with this page, which I've come over and added things to a few times. And then I did this one, and I really liked this. I was really trying to be loose. That was my main aim, and to not be afraid of using the paints. So this was another painting frenzy session that I had. Really like this. This is another painting that I did in my sketchbook that I really like. There's another painting one. And then there's this one as well. So I was working in this sketchbook and I was working in my junk journal a lot. And I decided that it would be nice to try getting a sketchbook that had thicker pages so that I could see whether that would help me be freer and looser with the paints, because I was finding that the pages of these sketchbooks were buckling a little bit. So I went and I got 2 new sketchbooks that have watercolour pages in them. So they're 300 GSM, much thicker, and so they're much more well designed for holding wet media. This one's a zigzag, so I started to work in it, and this is where I've got up to so far. Just came in yesterday and put in all this creamy background because it was just so full of colour and texture, and it was a bit too much, so I thought I'd just pare it back a bit. And then there's also a painting on the other side as well. And the nice thing with a zigzag book is that you can use it as almost like one long strip of paper, but one long painting, but then you can also have it as pages that tell kind of a narrative. They blend from one into another. Anyway, you can tell that I've been having loads of fun with all the colours and gestures and just really trying to be loose and going for it. So this was another painting. This is a painting I did in this thicker sketchbook, and this one, I don't know whether it's finished or not yet. So yeah, I've been really prolific this week, this last couple of weeks. Actually, I've discovered that although the thicker pages are quite nice, I think I actually prefer the thinner pages. Even though there's a little bit of a risk of buckling, there's something a bit kind of clunky about the really thick pages, whereas these are just a bit nicer somehow. So, I mean, I'll use up those other sketchbooks, but I think I'm gonna just stick with my normal kind of sketchbook going forward, even when I'm really getting into painting. So this is another book that I got recently, and this is by Barbara Ray, and it is her Arctic sketchbooks. She went on a couple of expeditions on a boat through Northwest Passage, I think it's called, and I'll show you some pages from this book because it is absolutely gorgeous. And just look at the colours. Oh, so gorgeous and so loose. I'm such a fan of Barbara's work. I really love this spread. Love this picture of the house with all these different colours. And I decided I'd do a little study of this piece here. So I used watercolours, and it was really fun to try and mix the right kind of colours. I just love the colour palette of this. So I decided that I didn't want to buy any new art materials recently and avoid the temptation of always trying out new things, because it's so nice to go and buy new materials. It's so exciting. But I realised that I've got such a huge hoard of things. When my grandmother passed away, she was an artist, I went into her studio and I found all these tubes of paint that had hardly been touched, that were all dried up and you couldn't use them anymore. And it just made me really sad. So since then, I have been really determined to use up as much as I can of all my art materials before they go to waste, because paint, it doesn't last forever. It does dry up in the tube. I hate the idea of hoarding art materials and being too precious to use them and then them going to waste over time. So I decided to challenge myself to use up all my art materials. I realised that I have a lot of art materials that I haven't used much or haven't used for a while. So I decided to get to know my materials better by swatching them. Here you can see I've been swatching, trying out all my materials. This was trying out my brush pens. This was colour mixing with watercolours. This was swatching out my watercolours. So here I was trying out my gouache paints and also colour mixing. So I think I have a magenta, brilliant yellow and a cobalt turquoise. So I was trying to mix the different ones together, and the same on this page. And then I was mixing them all with white and mixing them all together. So I'm not very familiar with gouache as a material, so this was nice to just kind of get a little bit acquainted with it. I'm also trying to use up or fill up all my sketchbooks that I have, that I've had ongoing for a really long time, so I can close the chapter on those books and put them away and call them done. So this is the first sketchbook that I started when I first got back into art, really, and it's mostly finished now, but I've just been kind of going through and finding pages where I feel like it could just do with something extra before I call it really finished. So there was this page, for example, so I decided to do some swatching on here and colour mixing. So these are watercolours. So I feel like I'm really getting to the point where I could finally call this sketchbook finished. And this is like, let's see, I started it in 2017. So that's like 7 years ago that I started this. And I'm just getting to the point where maybe I can call it finished, but I'm really just trying to use it up. This is another book that I got recently, which I love. And this is called The Flower Colour Guide. So this is the Flower Colour Guide by Phaidon, and some really great pictures in here for doing studies of flowers. It's really interesting because they're organised by colour rather than in alphabetical order. So I think it's actually designed for flower arranging, but I've really enjoyed looking at these. I think because of the white background, it's really easy to see the negative shapes and the outline of the plant. And I decided I'd do some studies from the book as well. So I did, this is an iris. This is a heliconia. And I did these with watercolour, and then I went over the top with coloured pencils. And this is a calla lily. So I've also been challenging myself by doing live streams on my channel. So some of you might have seen some of those videos, and it was so scary to do the first one, but it was really good to actually get over my fear and just get on with it. So this month I feel like I've actually grown a lot as an artist, because I've been facing my fears, I've been trying to challenge them myself, I've been, stretching myself, and I feel like I've really been growing a lot. I think before this month I was really focusing a lot on the business side of being an artist and worrying a lot about income streams and producing content for the internet and stuff, and I'd kind of lost touch with why I wanted to do this in the first place. It's really nice to rediscover that part, that joy-giving part of being an artist, because that is why I do it in the first place. So I hope that you've found some inspiration in this video, and let me know what you think about my artist vlog style videos, because this is the first one I've done, and whether you'd like me to do more of these in the future, or whether you prefer the tutorial type things. I'd be really interested to know. So let me know in the comments, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye.